There should be something on it. We got to finish proofreading it.
You got a title?
What?
Title?
He hasn't got a title for it. He does, but I don't know what it is.
Can you tell us a little about how you started in aviation?
My first ride in an airplane was a J3 Cub. And when I was in, I lived in Clearfield, grew up there. And my Deacon's Corps advisor was learning to fly. And he got his solo license out, got his solo license. But he hadn't got his private license, and it's illegal to do that now. And so he said to two of us, one day, would you like to go for a ride? Boy, I think that's great. So we went out to Ogden. There's a gravel runway at Ogden Airport. And the airplanes are in the hangars on their nose. They put them all on their nose on a mattress so that you get more airplanes in the hangar. And when we got there, we had to take some airplanes out and get ours out. And we just cranked it out and flew around. And that was my first ride in an airplane. When I went to junior high school, I delivered newspapers to Hillfield on a bicycle, the Deseret News. And I spent a lot of time riding up that gravel road. It's just hard now.
When did you leave Clearfield?
Well, I went into the Navy in World War II. And while I was in the Navy, the folks moved to Idaho, and that's where I came home to.
Now, when you got your A1, did your logbook tell you how many hours were on the airframe after the Navy mothballed it?
I don't have a logbook. We had a fire at our house and burned up everything.
You want to know, when you got an A1E, was there a logbook that told how many hours were on the A1Es when you got them?
Those are in the records. I don't think the pilots necessarily wanted to got them. The A1E that I flew over there, before I got to Vietnam, had gone off the runway down in the Delta area. Two pilots in there, it flipped over on its back in the water. They were both drowned. They fixed the airplane up and flew it for a while. And then I put some dents in it. And after they fixed it up, and that's the time that I'd come home. And there was a fellow that was flying it up in the Quignon area, and he got hit, and he was trying to make the runway. He was about out of gas and out of power too, and so he stretched his glide as much as he could, but he crash landed on the field at Quignon, and the airplane burst into flames and it burnt pretty badly. So they put it over in the bone pile. That's where they keep all the old airplanes that you need parts for. You go down to the bone pile. So they put it over there. And the chief of maintenance over at Pleiku, he was a lieutenant colonel, and I don't remember his name. He thought we ought to rebuild the airplane. And that's when some people, they even sent a tech rep over to look at it, and he said it's not economical to rebuild. And he said, we're going to rebuild the airplane. That's the lieutenant colonel telling us, Steve, I guess. We're going to rebuild the airplane, and if we have to do it, we'll do it in our off time. But we're going to rebuild the airplane. So they got the okay to go ahead with it. They rebuilt the airplane, and it was in good shape, and they were just getting ready to fly it some more. And that's when they decided to send it home. Well, very easy. When I went into the Navy, if you're 17, you can volunteer for the service that you want. Once you turn 18 in World War II, you were drafted. And most everybody was going infantry. And I'm not knocking infantry, but I didn't want it. And so I took the test for V5 pilot training program for the Navy, and I didn't pass them. And so I took the test for the V6 program, and I passed them. That's aircrew training. And I went to Mayport, Florida, and I was in about a year in the Navy, and then I got out. The war was over. And then I was gonna take that GI Bill and learn to fly that J3 Cub down at Oakland Airport. And my dad said, you better put it into an education rather than flying airplanes. And so I went to Boise Junior College 2 years and then down to the University of Utah for 2 years. Got my commission in the Air Force. And then we took the exams and passed them, and I felt good about that. And we went to Miranda, Arizona, first thing on the T6, and then you had my instructor down there was the name of Carl Anderson, who lives right up on the mountain road here. He was the instructor, and he helped me a little bit. He was a B-17 pilot in World War II, and he liked most of his students to fly the heavy airplanes. I think he kind of inclined us that way. And I thought that I'd like to do that too. And then just before we made the decision, they took a couple of F-80s from Williams Air Force Base, took the tanks off, brought them down to Miranda, Arizona, and give us that 20-minute Thunderbird show. You know, 8-point rolls, 6-point rolls over the top. I went into him and I said, I've changed my mind, I want to go to fighters. I went to Williams and went to the F-86, fly there. Well, I've enjoyed the Air Force. It's been good to me. I've met some very fine people in it. Let me just give you a compliment on your museum here. I think it's one of the finest museums I've seen. It's really nice. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of work goes into it, I know. And I talked to somebody about putting some helmets in the museum a long while ago, and I think he's done it. Hill was his name?
Tom Hill.
This guy.
Oh, Tom.
Well, I probably better call it quits and we'll sit down and talk on the chair.
Colonel, as our tradition, we give a little airplane as a memento of our museum. I don't have anything that you've flown. So take that home and put it on your bookcase and remember us.
I've never flown a B-17, but I got to sit in one once. I was going to mention, I think many of you know Saburo Sakai. He's the top leading living Japanese ace in World War II. He wrote in his book, and I've talked to him about it. He said, the B-17 is the toughest airplane in the world to shoot down. He said, we had 12 fighters up one day, and we were running into each other trying to knock him down. and that was on the island of, not Leahy, but Leyte. I guess it's Leahy, where the Japanese were. And the rains were down, and it was pouring down rain, and he said this B-17 was obviously lost, so it landed on this runway to get his bearings. And he said, we've got a B-17, we're in tall clover. And the airplane was just getting ready to shut down, and one of the Japanese gunners opened up on him. The guy spun around and took off. And Torborg, the guy says, I jumped in the trench, I was going to kill him. And here we had a B-17 and we let it get out of our hands. Well, thank you very much. That's a pretty airplane.
We thank you for the day, for coming down and spending an hour with us, and we hope you have a good trip home.
Thank you. I'm sure I will.
But come back next week, folks. Colonel Don Pantone's going to talk about America's flight, which was the anniversary flight of the 9/11 thing that went on back in New York and Washington, D.C. So come back next week.